October 27th, 1935, 10:15 p.m. Palace Chop House, Newark, New Jersey. The air inside the back room of the Palace Chop House is thick with the smell of expensive tobacco and cheap floor wax. Dutch Schultz, the beer baron of the Bronx, sits hunched over a pile of grease-stained ledgers. His fingers, calloused from years of gripping cold iron and dirty money, fly across the pages. Beside him, his bodyguards, Lulu Rosenkrantz and Abe Landau, are shadows in the dimly lit corner. The only sound is the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of a typewriter and the distant, muffled laughter of patrons in the front bar. Suddenly, the side door splinters. The silence is shattered by the deafening roar of a .45 caliber round. Crack, the sound of lead meeting wood, then flesh. Smoke fills the room, stinging the eyes. Dutch feels the white-hot bloom of pain in his side before he even hears the second shot. He falls, but as his vision blurs, his hand doesn't reach for his wound, it reaches for a hidden latch beneath the table. For months, the rumors had been rotting the foundation of his empire. Lucky Luciano and the Commission wanted him gone. He was too loud, too erratic. But Dutch Schultz didn't get to be the king of the numbers racket by being a victim of circumstance. As the hitmen from Murder Inc. stand over what they believe is a dying man, Dutch lets out a ragged, wet cough. He looks up, his eyes glassy, and whispers a string of incoherent, feverish nonsense. A last confession that would haunt the underworld for decades. But as the sirens wail in the distance and the gunmen vanish into the Newark fog, the man on the floor isn't praying. He's counting. He's counting the seconds until the world believes he's a ghost. To understand how a man could turn his own assassination into a masterstroke of psychological warfare, we have to go back to the moment the crown began to slip. Because in the world of the mob, the only thing more dangerous than a living legend is a dead man who refuses to stay buried. The blood pooling on the linoleum floor was real, the pain was real, but the target was exactly where he wanted to be. The game had begun, and the first move cost him his life, or so they thought. 3 weeks earlier, a private suite at the Robert Treat Hotel, Dutch Schultz paced the room like a caged panther. The wallpaper was a sickly floral pattern that seemed to close in on him. Outside, the rain lashed against the window panes, blurring the lights of Newark into a smear of grey and yellow. Across from him sat Otto Abadaba Berman, the mathematical genius who kept the Bronx numbers racket running like a Swiss watch. "They're voting on me, Otto," Dutch said, his voice a low rasp. "Luciano, Genovese, the whole lot. They think I'm a liability because I want to hit Thomas Dewey." "It's suicide, Arthur," Berman replied, using Dutch's real name. "You kill a special prosecutor, and the feds will burn the whole city down to find you. The commission won't allow that heat." Dutch stopped pacing. He looked at his reflection in the vanity mirror, a man in his early 30s who looked 50, eyes sunken from sleepless nights and the constant weight of the double V, vengeance and victory. He knew a hit was coming. He could smell it in the way his associates looked away when he entered a room. He needed a way out, but not a coward's exit. He needed to flush out the mole who was feeding the commission his locations. The plan was a staged death, not a faked shooting. That was too easy to spot, but a controlled catastrophe. He would put himself in the line of fire, ensure he was wounded enough to be hospitalized, but use the chaos of a dying delirium to feed false information to his enemies. He would leak the location of his legendary hidden treasure in his final breaths, a lure that would draw the betrayer out of the shadows. "I need you to fix the books, Otto," Dutch whispered, leaning over the table. "Make it look like I've moved everything to a safe in Phoenicia. If they think I'm dying, they'll stop hunting. If they think there's a fortune waiting, they'll start fighting each other." The risk was astronomical. 1 inch to the left, and the staged death would be permanent. But Dutch Schultz was a gambler who had never lost a hand he dealt himself. He chose the Palace Chop House for its exits and its loyalty. He briefed a select few. He prepared a deathbed speech that was a labyrinth of codes. He was preparing to die so that he could finally see who was truly alive in his camp. But even the best-laid plans have a way of bleeding out. October 27th, 1935, 10:17 p.m., seconds after the shooting. The smell of cordite is suffocating. Abe Landau lies slumped over a chair, his chest a ruin of lead and wool. Lulu Rosenkrantz is crawling toward the door, leaving a thick, dark trail behind him. And Dutch? Dutch is slumped against the porcelain of the men's room sink, where he had retreated just as the bullets began to fly. The hitmen, Charles the Bug Workman and Mendy Weiss, didn't stay to check pulses. In the high-stakes world of murder incarnate, you fire your rounds and you vanish. They saw Dutch go down. They saw the blood. That was enough. Outside, the street is silent. A lone, stray dog barks at the moon. Then, the first scream from the kitchen breaks the spell. The bartender, trembling, finds the scene. It looks like a slaughterhouse. But as he approaches Dutch, the dying man opens one eye. It's cold, sharp, and terrifyingly lucid. "Call the ambulance," Dutch rasps, the effort sending a jolt of agony through his torso. "And make sure the press is there. I want the whole world to hear what I have to say." As the sirens approach, Dutch begins his performance. This is The Effect, the legend of the dying mobster's rant. To the police and the doctors, it will sound like the incoherent babbling of a man whose brain is oxygen-starved. To the betrayer, it will be a map to a hidden kingdom. He had been shot below the heart. The bullet had traveled through his liver. He was truly, dangerously close to the end. But the adrenaline of the play kept him upright. In the ambulance, he began the transcript. "A boy has never wept, nor dashed 1,000 kim. The sidewalk was slippery," he muttered to the police stenographer. Hidden within the nonsense were the triggers. Phoenicia, the iron box, the woods. He was casting a line into a dark sea, waiting for a shark to bite. The consequence of this gamble was simple. If he survived, he'd know his enemies. If he died, he'd leave a trail of bodies behind him as they fought over a treasure that didn't exist. The legend was being written in real time, in the blood of his closest friends. But the betrayal went deeper than he ever imagined. October 28, 1935, Newark City Hospital. The hospital room smells of carbolic acid and impending death. Police officers stand guard at the door, their notebooks open, pencils poised. They are waiting for the big reveal. Reporters are gathered in the lobby like vultures, checking their watches. Every few minutes, a nurse enters to change the bandages, which are soaked through within seconds. Dutch Schultz is in a state of controlled fever. His temperature is spiking to 106 degrees. This wasn't part of the plan. Infection had set in faster than Otto Berman had predicted. Yet, even through the haze of peritonitis, Dutch maintains the ruse. The brothers, they let the ink out. "Get the money in the woods," he groans. Back in the Bronx, the underworld is in a frenzy. Lucky Luciano sits in a dim social club, listening to a rat who had just returned from Newark. He's talking, Lucky. He's talking about a safe. No steel box buried up north. Millions. Luciano narrows his eyes. He didn't order the hit just to get rid of a rival. He ordered it to consolidate power. If Dutch has a hidden reserve, it belongs to the commission. But there's a problem. One of Luciano's own captains, a man named Bo Weinberg, has gone missing. The tension in the hospital room is a physical weight. Dutch watches the faces of the detectives through squinted eyes. He's looking for a reaction to specific phrases. He mentions a name, Bo. He watches the stenographer's hand tremble slightly. The betrayal wasn't just about the commission. It was internal. Someone in Dutch's inner circle had tipped off Workman and Weiss. Someone knew the Palace Chop House schedule. By mentioning the treasure and Bo in the same breath, Dutch was setting a trap. He was making Luciano suspect Weinberg and making Weinberg panic. But the cost of the ruse is Dutch's own life force. He is fading. The staged death is becoming a very real one. He has to decide, does he reveal the truth to the cops to save himself, or does he take the secret to the grave to ensure his enemies destroy each other? He chooses the legend. He chooses the fire. But the fire is starting to burn him too. October 28, 1935, 2 p.m., a pier in New York Harbor. While Dutch is dying in Newark, the fallout of his words is already claiming victims. Bo Weinberg, Dutch's top lieutenant, is standing on a concrete pier, his hands bound behind his back. Two of Luciano's hitters stand behind him. "I didn't do it!" Weinberg screams, his voice lost to the wind and the crashing waves. "Dutch is crazy! He's just saying names. There is no box in the woods." The hitters don't care. In the world of the mob, suspicion is a death sentence. Dutch's delirium had worked perfectly. By whispering Beau's name in the hospital, he had painted a target on his friend's back. It was a cold, calculated move. If Beau was the traitor, he deserved to die. If he wasn't, his death would serve as a warning to the real mole. They put Beau's feet in a bucket of fast-drying cement. As the sun begins to set, they heave him over the edge. Splash. The water swallows him whole. No trial, no evidence, just the consequence of a dying man's words. Back at the hospital, Dutch hears the news through a whispered update from a crooked orderly. A grim smile touches his cracked lips. One down. But the fever is winning. His vision is failing. He starts to see things that aren't there. His mother, the streets of the Bronx in 1910, the cold eyes of the men he's killed. The theme of the night is price. The price of loyalty is death. The price of power is solitude. Dutch is surrounded by people, yet he is utterly alone in his final play. He has unmasked one betrayer, or at least removed a piece from the board, but the real architect of the Newark hit is still out there watching the headlines. Tell the boss. The pilot. He's got the map, Dutch mumbles. The police scramble. Who is the pilot? Is there a plane? The misinformation is spreading like a virus, paralyzing the Commission's ability to take over his rackets. The ghost is winning the war, but the man is losing the battle for breath. October 28, 1935, 6 p.m. The Special Prosecutor's Office. Thomas Dewey, the man who started all of this, sits in his office, surrounded by files on the Schultz organization. He reads the transcripts of Dutch's ramblings with a cynical eye. Unlike the mobsters, Dewey doesn't believe in buried treasure. He believes in cold, hard evidence. He's playing them, Dewey tells his assistant. Schultz is a cornered rat, and he's trying to bite everyone on his way out. He wants us to chase ghosts while his men move the real assets. But Dewey is only half right. Dutch isn't moving assets, he's burning them. He's making sure that when he leaves, there's nothing left for the Commission to inherit. The beer baron is dismantling his own empire from his deathbed. The city is on edge. Every time a car backfires, people dive for cover. The Newark massacre has turned the public's fascination with the mob into a fever pitch. The effect is working. Dutch Schultz is no longer just a criminal. He's becoming a folk hero of the macabre. In the hospital, the atmosphere shifts. The doctors realize he won't make it through the night. They offer him a priest. Dutch refuses. He has one more person to unmask. He knows the real traitor isn't Beau Weinberg. Beau was just the muscle. The real traitor is someone who understands the numbers. He calls for his lawyer. In the brief moment they are alone, Dutch whispers a single address in Phoenicia and a name. Not a mobster's name, a politician's name. The betrayal was political. The hit on Dutch wasn't just about Luciano. It was about a deal made between the Commission and the city's power players to trade Dutch's head for Dewey's silence. Dutch's decision is made. If he goes down, he's pulling the pillars of the city down with him. October 28, 1935, 8:30 p.m., the end of the line. The final hour of Dutch Schultz is a masterclass in psychological horror. He is thrashing against the restraints, his voice a guttural howl that echoes down the hospital corridor. The stenographer is exhausted, her fingers cramped from hours of typing the most famous last words in history, French-Canadian bean soup. I want to pay. Let them leave me alone. To the casual observer, it's madness. To the trained ear, it's a list of payments and debts. He is naming every cop, every judge, and every captain who ever took a dime from him. But he's doing it in a way that can never be used in court, only in the streets. The effeito lender, legend effect, is at its peak. He mentions the iron box one last time. He gives a set of coordinates that lead to a swamp in upstate New York. He knows that tomorrow, hundreds of men will be out there with shovels, digging for a fortune that exists only in his mind. He is creating a legacy of chaos. He wants the Commission to spend the next 20 years looking over their shoulders, wondering if the Schultz treasure is real, and wondering who among them has the key. His body is shutting down. The peritonitis has turned his blood into poison. But his mind is still a steel trap. He sees the betrayer enter the room. It's not a hitman, it's a man in a suit, a high-ranking official who had promised Dutch protection. The official leans in, whispering, "Where is it, Arthur? Tell me, and I'll make sure your mother is taken care of." Dutch looks at him, a flicker of the old Bronx street fighter returning to his eyes. He leans in close, smelling the man's expensive cologne, the smell of the man who sold him to Luciano. "It's in the place where you'll never go," Dutch whispers. "The truth." October 28, 1935, 11:35 p.m., pronounced dead. The heart of Dutch Schultz finally stops. The room goes silent, save for the scratching of the stenographer's pen as she marks the time of death. The beer baron is gone. Within minutes, the news hits the wires. Dutch, Schultz dead. The Bronx goes quiet. The speakeasies dim their lights. But the death isn't the end. It's the spark. The transcript of his final 24 hours is published in the newspapers. It's a sensation. People treat it like a crossword puzzle, trying to find the location of the $7 million he allegedly buried. The iron box becomes the holy grail of the American underworld, but the real consequence is felt in the shadows. Luciano's men are turning on each other. The names Dutch dropped, the pilot, the brothers, the ink, have created a culture of paranoia. Anyone who was ever close to Dutch is now a suspect. The Commission's peace is shattered. In the days following the funeral, 3 more bodies are found in the Hudson River. They were men who tried to find the treasure. They were men who knew too much or not enough. The staged death worked better than Dutch could have imagined. By dying, he became untouchable. You can't kill a ghost, and you can't interrogate a legend. He had unmasked the betrayer, the corrupt system that used him and then discarded him, by making the system eat itself. The legend was born in Newark, but it lived in the fear of those he left behind. But there was one final secret he didn't tell anyone. 6 months later, the Catskill Mountains. A man walks through the dense woods near Phoenicia, New York. He carries a small shovel and a weathered map. He's not a mobster. He's a former bookkeeper for the Schultz organization who managed to stay under the radar. He reaches a spot where 2 trees grow together like a pair of lovers. He digs. He digs for hours until his hands are bloody and his back feels like it's breaking. Finally, his shovel hits something hard. A steel box. He pries it open with a crowbar, his heart hammering against his ribs. Inside there is no gold. There are no stacks of $100 bills. There are only ledgers. The real treasure wasn't money. It was the proof. These ledgers contained the names, dates, and amounts of every bribe Dutch Schultz ever paid to the New York political machine. It was the life insurance he had talked about. Dutch knew that if he just hid money, someone would eventually find it and spend it. But if he hid the truth, he could control the city from beyond the grave. The bookkeeper realizes the weight of what he's holding. If he gives this to Dewey, the city falls. If he gives it to Luciano, he's a dead man. He realizes that Dutch didn't stage his death to save his life. He staged it to secure his revenge. The betrayer wasn't just one man. It was the whole rotten structure of 1930s New York. The choice is now his. Does he become the next ghost in Dutch's story, or does he bury the truth even deeper? The Palace Chop House is gone. The ledgers are lost to time. The iron box has never been officially found, though hunters still scour the Catskills every summer, fueled by the Effeito that Dutch Schultz carefully crafted in his final hours. Dutch Schultz remains the only man in history to have his dying delirium turned into a literary classic. He was a killer, a racketeer and a thug, but he was also a master of the narrative. He understood that in America, a good story is worth more than a good life. The betrayer he sought to unmask was eventually taken down, not by bullets, but by the very paranoia Dutch sowed. The Commission never fully recovered the Bronx rackets. Thomas Dewey used the chaos to climb to the governorship. And the Schultz treasure. It remains a ghost story told in the dim light of New York dive bars. The theme of Dutch's life was reputation. He spent his last breath making sure his reputation was that of a man who could never be truly defeated. He turned his assassination into a grand finale, a theatrical middle finger to the men who thought they could erase him. He proved that if you control the information, You control the world, even when your heart has stopped beating. So the question remains, if you were in that hospital bed with the world's eyes on you and your enemies at the door, would you have the courage to tell a lie that lasts a century? Or would you have let the truth die with you? Leave a comment below with your theory on where the iron box really is, or if it ever existed at all. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the dark corners of history. The legend never dies. It just waits for someone to dig it up.